Happy Monday, everyone. This is Martha with Nature Niche, and this week I'm concluding our fun in fens during the summer of 2024 with coastal-fen. So in the past 2 Mondays with Martha, we went over prairie fen and northern fen, and I thought it might be nice to end with our Great Lakes coastal fens. They are amazing places. So key characteristics for this particular type of fen wetland. It is a sedge and rush dominated wetland. The substrates are calcareous or basic. That's typical of fens. And in these, you'll have calcareous sand and clay substrates, marl deposits, some organic material or peat accumulation, but nowhere near the thick, deep peat that we saw in the prairie and northern fens. This type of fen occurs north of the climatic tension zone along the Lake Huron and Michigan shorelines here in Michigan, and it's very strongly influenced by Great Lakes water levels and processes. While it's still a groundwater-fed system, it is linked directly to Great Lakes water levels. State rank of S2, coastal fens are considered imperiled in the state. And again, like prairie and northern fen are regulated regardless of their size. This is by NERIPA, Part 303, Michigan's wetland regulations. And if impacts are necessary, you're looking at a much higher mitigation ratio of 5 acres of mitigation to 1 acre of impact, assuming they're permitted. This is quite a rare wetland ecosystem and one we want to take great care to protect. Globally, the status of this type of ecosystem is uncertain, but it has been reported from places like southern Australia, the Shetland Islands, and of course the Great Lakes region and northern California. There are such things as sea level fens along the Atlantic shoreline on the eastern seaboard of the U.S., and those can be found in Massachusetts, Connecticut, New York, Delaware, Virginia, and Rhode Island. Our coastal fens within the Great Lakes region are limited to glacial lake plains, where you have glacial till overlaying limestone and wet shorelines, and you'll find them along northern Lake Huron, Lake Michigan, southern Lake Superior in the state of Wisconsin, and along the Georgian Bay. All right, this is a map out of Michigan Natural Features Inventory's coastal fen abstract, the really detailed one. And as you can see, here in Michigan, we're going to find those coastal fens along the northern lower peninsula of the state and southern upper peninsula, along the northern shores of Lake Huron and Lake Michigan, and on both the mainland and our Great Lakes islands. As far as physiographic context goes, in Michigan, our coastal fens are going to be restricted to the flat glacial lake plains. So that's where large lakes, even bigger than our current Great Lakes, used to sit during the times of the glaciers. And so we have these saturated shorelines along northern Lake Huron and Lake Michigan. And often there's a thin, discontinuous layer of glacial till, so that's material kind of ground up and pushed around by the heavy, thick sheets of ice during glacial times. And that overlays often limestone bedrock or limestone cobble, and that sedimentary rock that that bedrock formed under an ancient sea. So you have limestone and dolomite as the parent material. And so you get these broad zones of shallow water and fine textured substrate. Here's a lovely photo of a coastal fen. And you get coastal wetlands developing, especially in the glacial lake plain embayments and like curving sections of shoreline where the water is shallow. The bottom topography is very gently sloping. You get less wave height and energy produced in these areas, and you get protected coastal wetlands where things like coastal fens can develop because they're protected more from erosive wind and wave action. So coastal fens are typically going to be along the shorelines of these protected embayments where they're sheltered from frequent wind, wave, and ice action, because all of those disturbances can prevent the development of peat and erode out those organic soils. So we find them in these protected locations. Coastal fens typically develop also where there's groundwater seepage percolating from either surrounding calcareous uplands or joints in the underlying limestone bedrock, where you have calcareous clay till exposed at the shoreline. And really differences in the bedrock and the mineral soil characteristics can determine whether you see a lot of seepages in springs. Sometimes you do, but they are not always visible. The soils of coastal fen are moderately alkaline to neutral, fine textured sand to clay, and they occur immediately adjacent to the lake. You can also have shallow marl and organic sediments. And as the lake levels rise closer to the shoreline, it's going to get inundated with lots of storm waves that wash those loose organic and marl sediments away. And so coastal fens are predominantly mineral soil, and that is calcareous and nutrient rich and moisture rich. You can get shallow peat and marl deposits, but with all that wind and wave action and ice action, those organic layers are typically less than 7 centimeters or a couple inches deep. So, and peat is like decomposed organic matter, plant matter, where with all the water and anaerobic conditions, microbes don't break it down, and so you can get these patchy mats of peat, but nowhere near the depth of peat that I showed you in the prairie and northern fens in the last couple of weeks. Extensive marl or like a gray mineral substrate can occur in these coastal fens, and that's from metabolism by algae. The stoneworts precipitate out calcium carbonate. So you'll have these shallow water supporting that type of algae, and you get pretty unique suite of species in those very alkaline conditions. You can also get the development of peat mounds or islands in coastal fens, and that's where you have a carpet of sphagnum mosses. That tends to happen in the extensive marl flats, and these little islands have their own acidic conditions from the reducing effect of those sphagnum mosses, and they can build up and raise the plant growing conditions above the level of the calcareous groundwater and substrate. So these little acidic microsites. As far as natural processes go, the hydrology inputs for coastal fen include nutrient-rich groundwater and also infrequent Great Lakes like wave storm events. The hydrologic regime for coastal fens is directly linked to the level of the Great Lakes. So the water table is not stable in these systems. You can see, and it's very complex and very variable hydrology. So a tough system if you're a plant or an animal species. Lots of change. There are seasonal fluctuations in the Great Lakes water levels. There can be short-term changes due to wind seiches and storm surges of the water level, and then lay that over with the long-term multi-year lake level fluctuations, and you have a very complex system. So storm waves can come in and like move the substrate around and remove fine mineral sediments and organic soils. Seasonal and annual water level changes help restrict the establishment of woody vegetation, so you won't see a lot of trees and shrubs in these systems. And then the long-term cyclical fluctuations or ups and downs in the Great Lakes water levels can influence, vegetation patterns. And the vegetation has to move laterally as the lake levels go up and then recede again. So you'll definitely get really well-established vegetation during those low water periods along the Great Lakes shoreline. And wind throw can have an effect. Severe storms can basically push or help the coastal fen expand further inland as trees come down and Great Lakes high water periods occur. Coastal fens are also influenced by groundwater seepage, so you'll have cool, mineral-rich groundwater that moves over or percolates through the base-rich bedrock and calcareous glacial deposits. And those are high in concentrations of calcium and magnesium carbonates. And coastal fens in Michigan generally have pH values ranging between 6.3 and 8.2. You can also have peat establishment where it's wet. The vegetation just decomposes very slowly. And so that peat can accumulate in protected areas where there's not as much wind, ice, and wave action. Coastal fen and northern fen are both north of that climatic tension zone, both dominated by calcareous, graminoid dominated flora. They both have marl and groundwater influence. The main difference is that our coastal fens have that direct connection to Great Lakes waters, and they have that shallower organic soil component, whereas the northern fens have the deeper peat. So botanizing in coastal fens is a lot of fun. Their vegetation is very unique and diverse. You have a sun-loving flora, a very rich herbaceous layer with a lot of different kinds of graminoid species, plus insectivorous plants, calciphiles, lots of wildflowers that are calciphiles, and then you can get scattered low shrubs and stunted conifers. So fens in general are really diverse wetlands, and you can have a lot of fun taking a look at the vegetation. There's so much microtopography and little differences in nutrient availability and water chemistry that really leads to the plant diversity in these systems, and you get distinct vegetative zones. So often there's a diverse fen meadow, and then you get these more sparsely vegetated marl flats with the really high pH. There are shrub thickets. Usually that's a narrow band close to the upland margin. And then low peat mounds that are dominated by sphagnum mosses and more of the ericaceous shrubs and scattered clumps of coniferous trees. And you can just have shallow pools of unvegetated just water areas as well. As far as sedges and rushes go, they're going to dominate that herbaceous ground cover layer, and they're often very rhizomatous, which means they spread by underground stems. That's really key to surviving in that harsh Great Lakes shoreline where the sands are shifting and the sediments moving around. A lot of vegetative spreading. So one of the main dominants is twig rush, Cladium marascoides, one that I've mentioned in some of the other fen ecosystems, as well as Baltic rush, Juncus balticus, blue joint grass, Calamagrostis canadensis. You can also get different spike rushes like Elaeocharis rostulata and elliptica, hardstem bulrush and three square, and wire sedge, Carex lesiocarpa, which we've talked about before as well. The common forbs in coastal fens, often you will see low calamint, Calamintha arkansana, Calms lobelia, and false asphodel, Tophilia glutinosa, as well as grass of Parnassus, dwarf Canadian primrose, several species of goldenrods like Ohio and bog goldenrod, Indian paintrush, balsam ragwort, common boneset, small fringed gentian, yellow lady slipper, grassleaf goldenrod, common water horehound, silverweed. There's just so much, lots of asters, so much forb diversity out there too. And you can get carnivorous plants like sundews, pitcher plant, butterwort, and the bladderworts, in particular Utricularia cornuta, which is shown here, and Utricularia intermedia. So they do well in these systems where, nitrogen is limited, it's a very calcareous environment, and iron and aluminum kind of render phosphorus insoluble. So being able to get nutrients out of insects is helpful too. And then up towards the upland margins, you can also get purple gerardia, nodding ladies, tresses, and gay wings. You'll have brown mosses, common in the shallow pool areas. And then shrub cover is pretty low. Typically in coastal fens, it's less than 25%, but we'll see some familiar players that we had in the other fen ecosystems: shrubby cinquefoil, sweetgale, calm St. John's wort, Hypericum calmianum. And then you can get other species like Labrador tea, large cranberry, creeping juniper, alderleaf buckthorn, soapberry, and bog willow. And those more ericaceous shrubs, it's much lower density. There aren't that many of them, but you can also get like bog rosemary and small cranberry in those low peat mounds. Trees are pretty widely scattered in the clumps on low peat mounds, and they're very short-statured or stunted. Northern white cedar and tamarack are most often what you'll find, but you can also see balsam poplar, black spruce, and paper birch creeping in until the Great Lakes water levels rise again. There's so many noteworthy plant and animal species that occur in coastal fens. In general, coastal wetlands just provide really critical habitat for invertebrates and birds and fish and mammals. As far as rare plants go and coastal fens, everything from prairie Indian plantain to some rare sedges and English sundew, and our federally listed dwarf lake iris and Houghton's goldenrod, and butterwort. And for rare animals, you can possibly see things like Blanding's turtle, eastern box turtle, and eastern Massasauga rattlesnake in these systems. If they're suitable nesting trees and snags, you'll often find bald eagle, merlin, and osprey in these ecosystems. Migratory birds use the nearshore habitat when feeding and resting as they're moving across the landscape. And mammals like beaver, muskrat, and river otter also use these systems. The same as with our other fen ecosystems, to best conserve and manage these systems long term, we really need to make sure we're protecting their hydrology. They're very sensitive to slight changes in water chemistry, so we have to protect those surrounding uplands, minimize impacts to their hydrologic regime, especially making sure we're not increasing surface flow and we're not reducing groundwater recharge to these areas. So establishing no-cut buffers around the coastal fens can help. Not constructing roads or doing full canopy removal in the forest stands directly adjacent to them is important. And yeah, just not constructing through them and altering their hydrology. Probably one of the biggest threats to coastal fens is from off-road vehicle traffic, and so keeping those ORVs out of there, not rutting up the system and affecting the hydrology or damaging the flora. And then making sure, when that happens, that opens up soils, and there's a greater risk of invasive species becoming established. So we want to watch out for things getting established and manage for them, like glossy buckthorn, purple loosestrife, narrowleaf cattail, hybrid cattail, reed canary grass, and common reed, otherwise known as Phragmites australis. I hope that you have enjoyed this fun little series exploring the different rare fen ecosystems in Michigan. And again, a very special thank you to Michigan Wetlands Association for showing us coastal fen in Cheboygan State Park, and just giving us an opportunity to enjoy some of the rare wetlands in Michigan. Take care and have a good week.